Irad, as you've seen in the bottom right, in that losers bracket semi-finals. Pretty much like a 4th place finish for Citadel. And then Na'Vi goes on and beats some of the top teams from the Americas region. And so it does feel like Citadel have a lot to prove. And when we spoke to players and teams about who you expect to be attending Atlanta, Citadel's name wasn't at the top. Navi's was alongside VP, but a lot of people are not expecting much from Citadel here. They want to make a statement, and they're not afraid to be villains or even just dicks about it, frankly. Like, they want to play in, but like, we hate everybody, we're going to beat everybody. That's the mentality that Citadel Gaming are going into these series with.
Citadel are definitely coming in with a chip on their shoulder, with something to prove, but they do not have the burden, the weight on their shoulders that Na'Vi had. Of course, coming in with like those losses being something to prove, but being the champions is such a big, heavy weight on anyone's shoulders. And of course, having one of your damage dealers abscond to the enemy. This is a matchup in the making with so much history behind it, and we're starting off on Celestial Husk.
And neither of these teams are the most dominant on domination, these King of the Hill maps, but they're still really good form, like positive win rate, especially on this map. It's 2-0 for Na'Vi and 3-1 for the guys over at Citadel. On the more recently added domination map, the draft is always going to be interesting, and if you leave that Jeff open for Na'Vi, they are going to take it.
The Mantis being prioritized over the Jeff here, choosing to worry about how Na'Vi, especially with the fact they have Jerky and the looks like they are going to be running with Naga. It was not going to be Crisis coming in here, but the fact that they do have the option for that hyper carry on something like a Star-Lord that could really capitalize with a Mantis, so still choose to go away from that. But they are actually going to get their hands on the Ultron quite early here, compared to some of the games we saw yesterday where we saw Invisible Woman or Lunar Snow being protected at this stage.
It really has been a case of Citadel not being too keen on playing Mantis. We have seen Melio be able to pick it up and play it in those instances, but he wants to go more for the Ultron. Maybe that's an element because Star-Lord is so prominent here. It's even like a sort of protect right at the end for Na'Vi in a lot of these games. But for now, it is going to be the duelist focuses. And it seems really Citadel Gaming are like, yeah, you could have the Jeff. We're just going to make sure that we take the Venom out so you don't have that team up to really dive in on us.
Extremely sensible. Venom has been one of the most impactful characters this entire stage, and of course that Jeff has quite a bit to do with it, but Venom can also still run fairly independently, so it's always going to be quite a safe ban and a safe protect, especially for Citadel, who of course do like that little bit more aggressive backline dive composition, and when you have an Ultron on your side, you can afford to be a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, a little bit more, and it's also that both the Vanguard's players can pick up the Venom if needed. Enzo was very well known for him back in the Invitational at the start of the year when these guys were under OG, but then we have seen Polly pick it up just a little bit more. It's really that Enzo was saying in an interview, they want to be much more flexible, and it's going to be a lot, I think, for the backline strategists to survive here when they have pretty much been banned out of 4 of them. You have a non-mirrored Jeff on the side of Na'Vi and a non-mirrored Luna.
Very interesting, making sure that they have a lot of safety here, but the question is, what do they fill that gap with? There is no Ultron banned against them, so they could go for Ultron Jeff Luna, or they may just choose to stick with the double strategist, and of course, Cloak and Dagger, while it's played a little bit less, is still available.
Pick your hero.
I think the Star-Lord ban is a good one. Like, we have seen some teams start to try to take it out just a little bit more, even to the point that Na'Vi have protected it twice over the stage. But it has been that second protect mostly. It's sometimes a little bit ignored. It might be a chance because it really has been one of those instances where Naga has been able to sort of clean up house as and when needed. You do have the Phoenix Jean Grey available and open, but I think one of the main things to highlight here, Techa, is that even in the group stages, for those seeding games especially, both these teams were like, we still have a lot to show. We're not going to be bashful and pretend, you know, tap on the nose. You'll see, like, we have stuff that we're ready to use. And there's no better time to use it in a game like this best of 5, to qualify you for the biggest international event that we've seen in Ignite, in Marvel Rivals even, for us so far.
These teams literally alluded to the fact they might even be hiding stuff, that some of those games at the end of group stages, they didn't need to show stuff. Now is the time. Ryan, I couldn't have said it better than Ryan. This is where all the marbles need to be on the line. Of course, coming first is good, that prize money, but these players they're almost certainly going to be in it to go to Atlanta, to try and compete to be the best in the world at Marvel Rivals, as we are heading into our first round. With Venom protected, Citadel do decide to go it, and they've chosen double aggression with the Venom and the Captain America, and they are continuing to utilize the rocket that has massively leapt up in priority for them, especially when comboed with that Star-Lord.
Yeah, we have seen a lot of the Rocket Jeff combination for double strategists, but running it with Alex on the Ultron, it's going to be even harder in the future, actually, with the healing buffs nerfs even coming into the future. But Na'Vi trying to look in for the dive. Trust me, actually getting a little bit isolated. It seemed that nobody else was really ready to jump into the waters with him for Na'Vi. So that's one of your main vanguards gone, but it has been traded on the other side. So 5v5 as the point has opened up.
Na'Vi have a very safe 2-2-2 setup here with a standard defensive dual vanguard here of the Emma Frost. A little bit more aggressive in terms of the Captain America. Early portal coming out for Enzo, making sure that they stay even on numbers so that they can try and keep control of this point. Use it early, it'll be back up for the last contestant. This is going to be the main strategy here. Jerky's going to be taken down. Thanks to Citadel evening up those numbers a bit. Alex should make it through the portal before it expires. Melio will almost certainly not, though. So this will mean that Na'Vi might be able to get a flip and a turnaround once they've been able to burst through with the numbers advantage of the returning players.
Enzo, that's the second elimination going against him, but a BR back is going to bring him in instantly this time. I'm pretty sure Citadel also have Adam Warlock available for them too if they really wanted to go for that, just stall out the fights, especially on this first point. We saw some really long engagements, and you have got the Dance of the Butterflies used from Jerky. The combination of the duelist ultimates for Na'Vi not providing control of the objective just yet, but it feels an inevitability as Citadel Gaming finally are forced off.
The flip finally comes in at exactly 50%. A little bit less than what you would expect to see. Normally teams would of course like to get as close to 99 as possible at the exact equal, when with Na'Vi having a massive ultimate bank here, that is great news for them. So now they have all the defensive tools to keep this in their favor, and I expect they'll probably get more than 50% here due to Citadel being a little bit lower in terms of ultimate economy, but they are building up. They've just got Freedom Charge, they're about to get Galactic Legend, but on the defensive side, Invisible Boundary, Fate of Both Worlds, the Freedom Charge on the side of Na'Vi as well, and to try and counter that Galactic Legend, they do have that Psionic Seduction from Rajaro, but Rajaro dropped a little bit low, healed back up to full, and so Inferno from way downtown for the setup, and it's enough. Tanuki taking down Jerky.
Yeah, the focus was to just break that a shield as well that comes in from the Invisible Woman, just to protect some of that sort of trash damage, the neutral damage that's been thrown out either side. Tanuki has just been a pure old assassin in this approach, going for these flanks. He has so many little lanes that he can find himself down to catch Na'Vi by surprise, and the Freedom Charge is there to try to keep this point ticking in favor of Na'Vi. It's not going to be much for this Galactic Legend now. Tanuki making his presence known. He's not being shy about this one, but it still is in control of Na'Vi up until now, 65% for them.
Alex playing very far forward, trying to chase down. Crook will fall. Portal not going to be utilized here. Na'Vi just choosing to make their way in on foot once again, as the score is pretty even, 65-65, but Citadel continue to climb. Ultimate economy almost exactly equal here. Difference is Alex is pinging away from long range here, which could in theory build up some ultimates for Fate to get them back into that ultimate economy in terms of defense. Beats from the Abyss from Enzo. Alex with the rage of Ultron. They are CC immune but not damage immune, as that Emma Frost chases them down.
They were just bullied away from the rest of the team. Citadel Gaming tried to back out. Freedom Charge is now going to come in alongside the Arm Amplifier, but right on top of it, that Ensong is going to take it straight out, destroying it immediately. But Paulie, he's going on the offensive now. It seemed that that ultimate that he came out with the Freedom Charge was more as a protection bit of Citadel, but he's actually turned the ante back onto Na'Vi just as they've hit 99%.
Citadel's targeting there was insane. They popped the Phoenix, keeping the Yard Amplifier active. That let them sustain through the rest of that fight. They didn't even lose the bonus health from it. With that, Citadel will take point number 1, taking the Vault as we head towards the Codex.
And there was a portal used there, right, like towards the end from Na'Vi, right? We heard the sound. It just didn't seem that there was any follow-up from Na'Vi, like whether it was just at the end of it. But the main point is that they should have it at the end of this second point if they need to rely on it. But the timing just seemed to be a bit neither here nor there. Enzo using it early, wants to try to keep the tempo in his favor. They win that first fight, they want to keep that gravy train going. Then you want to sort of use the portal right at the end when you're in overtime to just keep stalling it. But Na'Vi sort of used it at like 75%. And then it was still in control of Citadel. So it was a bit of an awkward spot for them to be in. Both these guys, decent at domination, but not quite the same level that Chopped have been on in form. And you look at Citadel Gaming maybe being the favorites here because they were the domination gods against teams like Virtus Pro way back when. It just hasn't come to fruition this stage.
Stuff has definitely changed. They're going to be setting up an early portal. Look at the positioning as well. Captain America standing in front because there is still a chance of someone getting hit by that frozen arrow from Hawkeye. It's a really rare rollout strat, but it still, I believe, happens very rarely from time to time. It's going to work out, though. Portal engaged to take out Crook, trust me, and the point is being rushed onto.
As just an age-old strategy from Citadel Gaming, just trying to get in behind somebody with the portal and just kidnapping them, essentially. It's not completely for free for Citadel Gaming. They do lose 2 players in the process, and the point hasn't been taken yet, which allows Na'Vi to actually group up in full force. All 6 players are making their way in, but they get off for a split second, and it now allows control for Citadel.
They held the point, but Na'Vi are currently starting to flip it round. Enzo has to retreat back onto the point. Can't continue the chase that they were looking for a little bit early. Jerky's in the back line. That's looking a little bit rough for Captain America. Polly drops low, but will sustain on through. Allows them to keep that fight going. Enzo not so lucky as Na'Vi are starting to group in from multiple angles. The BRB, though, keeps it going. Melio takes out Jerky, meaning numbers leaning in favor heavily of Citadel right now as they force out the invisible boundary in exchange for the range of Ultron. Very worthy trade. It's such a quick charging ultimate. Galactic Legend. Robert Bomb forces out the fate of both worlds as well, burning through all of these big defensive tools.
And the end song, can it bring honors in favor again? Forces out the freedom charge though. Polly gets stunned, but it's not going to interrupt this ultimate as it goes through. And Polly is absolutely going through this backline. Level 1 Crook and Naga both taken out. And Enzo and Melio finding a good follow-up. 50% on the board. They've managed to stagger some of the members of Na'Vi. So this is starting to look a little bit stressful for Na'Vi now that they have to take this point.
Incredible auto cancels there from Polly, just showing why they are so feared on this Captain America. It was one of the most banned heroes against Citadel Gaming at the mid-season finals for a region. Internationally recognized menace, Captain America in the hands of Polly. And we're seeing exactly why. Na'Vi starting to try and make their way back in. They have Meteor M and Song Inferno going to be coming out from Melio quite early here, looking for the right angle, directly into the back line. Bomb that raccoon. Ken is taken down. Jerky with the dance of the butterfly is causing too much damage though on the counter. Citadel melted off the board here as Na'Vi reclaimed control, but they lost Jerky. There is a chance that Alex could sustain them through this. Enzo's going to try and potentially portal them back in. No, they swapped to Venom. They're going to try and re-engage as portal's on cooldown.
And Polly's still in this fight. It's the most like lore accurate version of Captain America that we've seen, of just going into these 1 versus 6s and not being afraid, strapping his shield to his arm and ready to go. But Citadel are a very ratty team and just keeping that progression into their favors, and even winning fights when there are a couple of players down. Polly's wasting no time to go in on the offensive on a character like you mentioned, Tetcher, that we haven't seen that much on. Maybe this was the thing that they were saving. Just don't forget about Polly on Cap.
It does work so well here, and utilizing the Venom at the same time just gives them so much aggression. Psionic Seduction, Rajaro looking to be the counter dive here. They've also gone for the Magneto. They're hyper committed to 1, this X-Men team up for so they can get those clones in for a little bit of extra damage.
Sneaky.
And 2, they have that extra shielding, keeps them sustained up. Polly getting juggled, but still sustains. They can do this all day. On the run, finally caught up by Naga.
Starting to feel a little bit for Citadel that whilst they are playing a very open, fluid, divey composition, that there's just like 3 different fights happening at all different points now. And Na'Vi are sort of building things up to 50%, but they can't lose a fight here as Citadel Gaming have a map in point in hand even, and at 98%. So Citadel Gaming just looking for 1 good fight, a few good ultimates, and they're raring to go. But look how much Na'Vi have in the back pocket. Invisible Boundary is going to be the first one used.
Defensive tools by Crook, keeping themselves safe, at least for the moment. But if you look what else, Fate has that Eternal Bond swapping over to the Cloak and Dagger for those defensive purposes, making sure they have any kind of defense. Has to force it out, though, because Naga will cause the engagement, takes out Alex, but they're brought back to the BRB, keeping this at a 6 versus 6 Freedom Charge, and the Galactic Legend trying to take them out on the backline, but there's so much cover in this area, Tanuki just cannot find the angles.
It's a Freedom Charge just trying to force out Na'Vi from these positions where the Star-Lord can't get much action. And now the Dance of the Butterflies is going to be used mostly onto Enzo, that's able to mitigate some of that damage, and even going to try to get out of the portal. He was pretty much a knife in the back from Jerky right at the end. It's going to reset him for a little bit more time, and it's now 99% to 99%, but back in favor of Citadel. Na'Vi need to try and find a way to be able to touch it, and they can't. Citadel Gaming able to take this first map of domination against Na'Vi.
Nicely done, Citadel taking the lead. And while it wasn't all close in some cases, the just continuous aggression, like you said, the multiple angles of fights just seem to be a little bit too much for Na'Vi to deal with. Of course, a common and well-deserved MVP for Poly, back where they belong on that Captain America.
It really does feel like one of those ones that Na'Vi maybe went, yeah, because, you know, you're looking at drafts in comparison to what we saw in Stage 1, where Captain America was a little bit stronger. He did get nerfed slightly in that time, but, like, him in the draft is just not really a thing in comparison to before, because there's more of a focus of going to the strategists, and if you are taking out some of the vanguards, it's like Emma Frost in those, like, convoy maps, or even Venom to stop those Jeff team-ups. It means that if you can get to Captain America for free and do this work, you might as well. There's a lot of people saying that Poly's not only the best Vanguard in the world, but might be the best player in the world with the impact that he has, and this is one of those examples.
They're making it work, and a lot of the tools that we would have seen around mid-season time that would have been used to try and maybe counteract a little bit more of this dive are a little bit less valuable now. Loki, for example, is actually being played a little bit less, which makes it a little bit harder. Of course, the Emma is being played, but she can only really deal with either one out of the Captain America or the Venom, and she can't do much at all about Tanuki unless you want to burn an entire psionic seduction into the sky.
Yeah, I will say that, like, Tanuki had a great showing as Star-Lord. That non-mirrored Star-Lord ban at the end, I think, is going to become a lot more of a thing. For other teams, frankly, it should be in these bigger games. But I also have to say that on the other side, Naga, the impact that he had on that Jean Grey Phoenix, the picks that he got onto, like, Tanuki just as he gets that Galactic Legend, he's able to just win a lot of those, like, 1v1 duels happening around the map. He brought Na'Vi back into this one. It was just too much done too soon for Citadel Gaming with taking that first point.
It really was. Citadel were just able to take control. Na'Vi, like you said, they had the tools, they had the counterplay. There's just too much going on. They burnt a lot of cooldowns a little bit early on the side of Na'Vi. In this case, Citadel are able to continue their revitalize, we'll say, some of their domination from last stage onto domination. So the question is, where do we think they're going next? We, of course, have Convoy or Convergence, and I know you've looked into this a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about it in the break because I really want to see. Yeah, I want to see what it is. But essentially, it's probably not Convoy, is what I'd say. But we'll go over that a little bit more after the break. So we'll see you very soon. These are the kind of games where teams really have worked all year up to them, because this is a big qualifying game, and Citadel Gaming have found themselves 1-0 up against the current world champions of Na'Vi on a game mode that suits them. Now for Na'Vi, it really feels that you have the choice of Convergence or Convoy, so I guess, Techa, where on earth should they take this?
Yeah, I see. I jumped the gun a little bit because the break was coming up when I asked you that question. Did not give you enough time to answer this. So you've been looking into this. You have the statistics. What have you seen? Where are we potentially going? Where are we potentially not going?
So I think there's a couple of teams as well. For example, we've got Chopped coming up that have never lost on Domination. That is pretty much true for Citadel on Convoy. They're 7-0 on those pure payload maps. On all of them that they've played, they haven't dropped a map yet. It's actually just 2 for 1 on the side of Na'Vi. They are going to go towards Yggdrasil, which is the oldest one that we have in the game. This is not only a map that Na'Vi are undefeated on. The problem, however, is that Citadel are 3-0 on this, and they've picked it twice. So it's like, if Citadel had lost that last Domination map, they might have brought us here.
Well, we'll find out which team this is going to work out better for. We're starting off with the double Mantis bans, meaning there's a chance we could see Na'Vi secure themselves a one-sided Jeff if they wish to go down that route. Remember, it was available for Citadel last game, and they just did not run it, I believe, or did it get banned later on? Either way, they're not going to go for it. It's Invisible Woman as the secure.
It was a one-sided Jeff in favor of Na'Vi, and yeah, we never really got to see it used. I think I spoke to a couple of teams after it yesterday, because I remember us talking about it with the OG Seed series, and being like, is it a bit of a throw, frankly, that if you get a one-sided, like Ultron one-sided Jeff, and then you don't use them? And the general consensus was not necessarily. It's there to just limit the options that the enemy team have, and so if you put them basically on one comp that they can use on a certain map, and you can find a counter that doesn't have an Ultron or a Jeff, you'd still just run that. But it does feel a little bit like you have to plan ahead and really look at how these drafts start to differentiate once we get past these first protects. Emma Frost being non-mirrored on the side of Citadel Gaming makes a lot of sense, because we are going to see a lot of those triple Vanguard, triple strategists on defensive first point.
We've seen a couple teams start to drift away from that, but the overall consensus seems to be we are just going to be as beefy as possible, return multiple times. That's why we are to time to see Doctor Strange bans on Convoy, but that Emma Frost is one of the most valuable picks when it comes to that. And Citadel not go for a Strange ban to start us here. They actually ban out the Adam. The two ways you can keep this sustain going, of course, is to portal back in for a second go, or for revives. You'll often see this with the BRB, but Rocket just isn't worth the ban spot at these days. But the Adam Warlock is, because the full team revive can be fantastic if you're going for extra holds, especially if combined with the Doctor Strange, and it's a great last second rollout if you roll with Doctor Strange, thanks to Soul Bond giving you a lot of extra health when you actually go for a last second engage due to it having no cooldown, and as such it's banned on both sides.
It feels as well that if you ban out the Adam on one side in a game mode like this, it pretty much forces Na'Vi to have that fourth and final ban for them be the Adam themselves. So now I think Citadel like to be in this position where they could be a little bit more flexible, and that's where that Protect comes in onto Star-Lord, which I think did a lot of damage to what Na'Vi wanted to do on Domination beforehand.
Star-Lord going to give them a lot of dueling potential once they break that first point. We rarely see it on the first initial engage, just due to its damage being a little bit slower outside of that ultimate. So being able to pick something up like the Moon Knight, like the Punisher, for example, is going to be a little more efficient at burning through those first setups. Luna will be protected, though, in that last rotation, and we will finally see Jeff taken out on one side.
Right at the end. I guess there was an element of, like, Citadel were very keen to take up Mantis quite a lot in the earlier games, but it seems to be this like meta approach of like using the Jeff more when you have access to it, going for stuff like Ultron. Here I think the Luna Protect is a nice one for Citadel, just to make sure that you have a good strategist to rely on, whether you're going to play 2-2-2 at any point during this map or in a triple strategist kind of composition. Having the Luna Snow is nice, and you still have access to the Loki, because that's just not really been touched at all in these drafts so far.
The Loki, of course, could give you some great capabilities. It's mostly played these days with the Mantis, just due to one, that extra area you get from that Vibrant Vitality, but also being able to get the damage boost from that setup as well. but it still does see some appearances, especially if a lot of those strategists are taken out. You can either go for someone with maybe a strategist ultimate that isn't going to be as efficient for you, or just get a second one of the one you want. And we are going to see that here for Citadel. They will play that low-key. They've got Luna Snow, so they can go for that double fate of both worlds.
For Rajaro, only Angela could have gone in for a little bit of a dive, but the expectations here is not going to change up too much with these kind of compositions. Really trying to rat out Citadel Gaming's position, and there's only really been more of a pivot on where these guys are playing from. Navi on the defense, for example, playing on the right-hand side, cubbied up in the sort of throne room on the right. But here, Citadel Gaming taking this fight pretty much head-on. They're not trying to bunker themselves into a safe position. They're out in the open and they're winning these engagements.
Making sure that they are in the open so that their strategists can hit them. Ken is, of course, set up on that high ground and is sieging in for Citadel to make sure that everyone can just stay in that central pathway and then retreat around the corner. Same with Tanuki, going to be shooting mostly just down from the high ground or just around the corner. So a main lineup, a full front-on assault is the best position for the strategists here. And it does work. Enzo takes out Rajaro, but while this is happening, trust me, it's built on a straggling prison. Naga has built on a Fist of Khonshu, and the card has moved all the way to the first corner, which is usually where we'll see the first big stronghold. A lot of the ultimate being used to Hand of Khonshu to burn on through, trying to get onto Magneto, but Melio is dropped solo, will finally be taken down and brought back at the Cosmic Yard at the BRB. There's the Cosmic Yard amplifier.
Yeah, it's all going to be used in one go, and now Polly's swinging things back into his favor yet again, using that extra bit of damage boost. He's got the Idol Aura on him too, which really allows him to just be almost like another duelist. He's not afraid to really get stuck in, and the invisible boundary is there to just pretty much supplement this offensive attack. The Psionic Seduction alongside Ken, who was the god of mischief, copied over the Invisible Woman, because I'm pretty sure it's one-sided. Navi having their one-sided Invisible Woman stolen away from them.
The power of the Loki, but also the power of Citadel's just hyper defense here. They took down Jerky before they were able to ult, but after it was activated, meaning that they lost a full cooldown without any of the effects, but they still have that damage boost. Media M coming in from Melio into the backline, but it is completely dodged out. Fate's going to be able to block that with the Dark Falls teleport. Strangling Prison massively disabled their Citadel with the retreat, but trust me, is looking for any single mistake. A wall off, a protection from the healing, blocking that line of sight. The Eye of Agamotto comes on out, and Navi are breaking the line.
That's a really big Eye of Agamotto from Rajaro. Whilst it seemed the Citadel Gaming were ready to go in on the dive off the Freedom Charge, Rajaro just sort of seems to cut inside of where Polly was playing from. Is this Paul play going to try and interrupt them? I think it is.
Portal coming in, they're trying to lock them down, trying to prevent the portal. They have to drop it early just to make sure that they can reach the point in time, because they were being harassed. Naga is going to get taken down by Polly as the counter portal comes on in. Silent Seduction to try and catch them on the side, so still giving everything they can for this defense, but Navi are building back up. There was another Hand of Khonshu, which is going to completely prevent Citadel from touching the point, but first, the Omega Hurricane onto the backline, trying to catch Luna once the ultimate expires to burn through the strategist, but the healing output, the Iron Bulwark is enough, and they completely counter out Jerky.
There's a really good bulwark as well. It's Polly down that's moved over to the Magneto, giving Melio some freedom to come back on the Strange. So that adjustment was a very quick one and very swift, because Melio now has an Eye of Agamotto on this defense. Navi tried to be a little bit preemptive with their strike of going for a portal play to stop Citadel Gaming getting involved, but it just didn't seem to work. If anything, I think it allowed another route of Citadel to throw in damage, and they take out Naga, who has the Fist of Khonshu for this fight. That Strangling Prison combination is available.
No portals available for either team, only 19 seconds remaining. If Navi can land this combo, they could be in with a chance. Melio has the Eye of Agamotto. Ken has the God of Mischief, maybe wanting to drop that soon, will in fact do so. Fate of both worlds now at the ready for an extra defensive tool. Eye of Agamotto into the backline, into the Hand of Khonshu to try and tank on through, to try and get some counter damage. Both teams are staying on through, but Polly finds the backline dunk. Enzo taking out Rajaro, and the bodies are being zoned off the point. The lockdown down into the sky on Jerky. Enzo takes out Crook. Naga falls, and Citadel live up to their name. They lock the gates and keep Navi out.
Really good fight. Melio, I think that Eye of Agamotto was major, because it doesn't stop that Strangling Prison Fist of Khonshu combination. There was still a lot of damage going down onto Citadel there, but it just made sure that the players nearby couldn't follow up with any just normal left-click damage. That might have been the difference to actually eliminating some of those players in Citadel Gaming in that final fight. So just, it's coming down to timing, and it's coming down to a lot of Doctor Strange moments, I think, on this map already. I will say, though, that, like, Na'Vi still have a chance here because pushing past the first point is pretty uncommon, I'd say, for these bigger teams. These solid defensive holds are possible, but they were hoping to get past that first checkpoint at the very least.
And Na'Vi, they're looking for a little bit of environmental advantage here, and also a home field advantage, if you can count Isgard as Angela's home, as she was raised in heaven, of course. But being able to get a quick knockoff on that main side objective point can mean this first actual fight can be extremely difficult. And of course, the extremely fast rollout means Jerky will be reinforcing their team very quickly. We were looking at Storm Punisher with Tanuki and Melio, but Tanuki is actually moving over to the Human Torch, not going for the damage boost here.
And the stats as well, it's sort of expected when you have triple Vanguard, triple strategist. Not many eliminations just across the board. Even players like Tanuki not getting a final hit, but that's mostly because he's filling in onto like other strategists or just trying to do some trash damage to break on through with the Storm. Now Citadel Gaming on the attack. Wanted to try to fight out a little bit more, and Na'Vi, like I was saying before, like to sort of hang on this left side and play within this building, and it might force Citadel Gaming to really just flush them out, if anything. However, these group walls need to be a bit more respected. Jerky can fly over them, but he takes a lot of damage that he has to retreat a little bit more.
Tanuki is going to be the first to fall, though. Crook's going to be getting that with the Force Physics as Citadel try to make their way up anyway. They're utilizing that Jeff, returning to the board here. Venom diving on in, trying to cause some pressure. Lovely using the Terror Cape onto Melio. Melio with the jump back actually moves out of danger by taking to the air. Once again, Venom jump back in. They don't have a lot to counter him. They're heavily reliant on Enzo to land that CC, but Enzo is a bit busy being the front line with Holly.
You have Fate as well. It's been playing the Cloak and Dagger. You've got stuff like the Luna still available. It's not one-sided for Citadel Gaming. It was just protected as far as I can tell. So it was Fate doing it on the attack side as well, trying to get a lot out of this Terror Keep for the extra damage boost. Maybe that's going to be the difference to break down some of these tankier characters. And Strangling Prison is available for Polly. He's switched over to his third Vanguard so far in this map, and we haven't really got to see too much time on the clock for it. It really is now Na'Vi just letting things crouch forward a little bit more, but they have so much to rely on if these fights start up. Citadel Gaming have all 6 of their ultimates pretty much ready to go, and they're going to start to use them now.
Great placement off that Cosmic Guard Amplifier means it's not really counterable. Media Emperor Barragero takes Melio out through the ultimate, meaning that Psionic Seduction isn't going to find much of a target. In fact, Enzo is going to be isolated from everyone there. Jerky with the beautiful setup with the Axes of Ica, and they are setting this defense incredibly. You talked about it. This first point is hard to take, and while Na'Vi didn't get to hold as far back as they would like to with Angela by potentially getting some environmental pickups, they are able to punish everyone who steps around this corner.
There's 4 ultimates run in from Citadel against Na'Vi's 3, so now the 2 that they have available, that combination with Jeff, the Sharknado, trying to gobble up whatever it can. It does grab onto Trust Me, that is eliminated. He had the Feast of the Abyss, so there was a chance for him to maybe be in these fights a little bit longer. The Be Right Back is going to bring him straight back into this engagement, and now we see the Angela slamming down onto the ground with that ultimate, connecting onto a few people, but Tanuki's fighting back.
Trying to take out the Flyers here. Tanuki's getting a lot of damage, but Angela's just too relentless. Jerky taking down Tanuki. Now diving back in once again. Isolation onto Enzo, away from their strategist once again. Taken out with the axes. And this is Jerky putting on a clinic on this Angela, but they're still outnumbered. The cart keeps moving. The goats are set up. Melio looking to potentially set up for a culling turret, just trying to find the right positioning on the goats. Chooses to head to the ground here.
Oh, just as the Venom goes for the dive, it's just right as the turret shows up. So him and Tanuki clear him out completely. Rajaro has gone over towards the Strange, so I imagine a port play is about to come in. There's the Cloak and Dagger trying to throw a Terror Cape that connects onto a couple of plays, but there's not really enough follow-up damage that's going to scare off Citadel now that there's only 5 meters in between the difference and less than a minute to go.
45 seconds remaining. Psionic Seduction from the flank. Tanuki finishes off Jerky. No more portal, but Angela is a fast rotation. Level 1 Crook forced to use the invisible boundary for the defense. Alex with the Fate of Both Worlds, which can be used for damage boost to melt through everyone here. Eye of Agamotto for the counter. Force Physics to send them back into the air and prevent the crowd control. Rocket is melted. It's hunting season. Jerky is trying to come in to be the savior, to try and hold the gates, but the card moves forward and Citadel go up 2-0.
Oh, this is interesting. You'd expect that Na'Vi were the favorites in this one and in a dominant fashion, but Citadel Gaming have found themselves 2-0 up, and now it's forced to a convoy map where they've never lost. They are rubbing their hands, licking their lips, and basically saying to all of us, we told you. One more map would send them to their second international event, would send them to Atlanta. Na'Vi have to dig deep.
They have to dig deep. They have to find something to turn this around, because otherwise they are, to be fair, in a position where they're pretty used to and has been where they have capitalized the most in a lower bracket. This has been where they found a lot of... this team faced a lot of adversity. They were in the lower bracket in the mid-season finals, went on to win. They had to re-qualify for Ignite due to how the setups worked out. They made it in and have made it this far. Na'Vi are best when their backs are against the wall.
I think that you said that for both of the teams, it's very much like Dragon Ball Z Saiyan energy, right? With like, where every time they get defeated, they come back stronger. And like, these are never teams, whether it was Citadel Gaming winning EMEA Stage 1 of Ignite or Na'Vi winning the mid-season finals, you can't say that they did it cleanly. They dropped maps, they dropped series. They just had enough about them to come back into those rematches and look the stronger side. But I feel here, when you've got 3 qualifying spots and there's the likes of Na'Vi and Chopped and even FaZe and Somnia looking for a chance to come back and surprise people, it's not going to be that cut and dry. And I think Na'Vi are maybe going to get a little bit nervous if they're knocked down to that loser's bracket. They might be nervous now.
They might be, quite frankly, because this is the difference, because the teams that win here, they take 2 of the 3 spots between Na'Vi and Citadel and Virtus Pro and, of course, Chopped. They take 2 of the spots. If you go to the lower bracket, you are fighting for 1 spot. Your odds go down so much more. So the odds just are not something you want to be actually thinking about. You want to be winning this game here, and Na'Vi are already on the brink. Citadel, they need 1 more win to qualify for their second international event in the team's history in Atlanta.
I mean, both of these teams are wanting to try to run it back and be the 2 teams that we have sent to international events as well. Like, nobody else has managed to go. So the fact that both of them are fighting for this first spot says a lot that they have expectations on them, because whether it was another organization for Na'Vi or unsigned for the Berber Patapim guys that became Citadel Gaming, now they're expected, I think, to attend that event, and that can add a whole lot more pressure. So we'll see whether that pressure brings us a full best of 5 series, a reverse sweep maybe for Na'Vi, or a very easy 3-0 statement for Citadel after this break.
Citadel are sitting 2-0 up versus the world champions, the team that they've already beaten once when it comes to EMEA in order to take EMEA Stage 1. Na'Vi, they are on the brink of being sent to the lower bracket and potentially missing out on that qualifying spot. Citadel, they're only 1 win away from heading to Atlanta.
Doing it with such panache, right? Like, if they do it in a 3-0 fashion against the current world champions, best team in the world, with the fact that they won that mid-season finals, that would say a lot, but it's whether or not Na'Vi have enough about them to actually maybe adjust what needs to be adjusted within the draft and then be able to go on, kind of like we saw against Virtus Pro when they played up against FaZe, or whether this is going to be, I stole this from Twitch chat, whether this is going to be a fries in the Bagamoto moment, I think, which is just that Citadel go on and win this 3-0.
We'll have to find out, as of course we now have to go to a convergence map. We just started with domination, we went to convoy, and now we'll be making our way to convergence at the map choice of Na'Vi. Where are they taking us?
Gotta listen to the music. Oh, we actually, sorry, we did see Convoy even, so that's just another tally up for Citadel. Now we do go to Halls of Jalia, which it feels like a map that has a lot of trauma attached to it. Usually Na'Vi have been the ones that feast off of that trauma by beating teams like Virtus Pro and the like, but this is a map, I'm not going to sugarcoat this, Tetcher. This is a map where Citadel Gaming have just not looked good on it.
Na'Vi, though, they have looked very good and also have some interesting strategies. When we come to defense, we'll see if that comes in. Also, Crisis is here again, joining Jerky instead of Naga. We're starting off with the double Mantises on either side. And Jeff protected again for Na'Vi. They did play it last round, so it is being utilized. Of course, Fate is one of the best Jeffs of all time. I will definitely add that, while Ken and also Tanuki are certainly attempting to compete for that. And even VP are starting to put their name in the hat. And Winnie, of course.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these players that we saw briefly, I suppose, in stage 1, as in that they didn't make playoffs, so if they did, they went 0-2. They've come back on either new rosters or just leveled up their whole gameplay to be mainstays, right? You know, Ken and Alex were that strategist duo to keep an eye on outside of your Saipe and Dredro for Virtus Pro. But it's not that they've been bad. I think it's just that there's been other like strategists around them that have actually caught up that we have such a good group and it's hard to rank them all.
Yeah, ironically, despite being a lot of people requesting new strategists fairly consistently, I'm out there as well, Sleepwalker when, we just have incredibly strong strategists at the moment. We have, I don't think there's any strategists we haven't seen.
That's true, but I guess that's just because most of them do get banned out, so you have to sort of rely on
that's true.
Maybe one. You know, it says a lot when like Rocket Raccoon is like really looking good, and then it seems that he's not even getting like buffed as such in the future. Like he's getting it more like give with one hand, take with the other kind of vibes, right? So there's always that option. I do think the Citadel's draft has looked somewhat the same here, right? It was very similar to what we saw in Domination with the Mantis, Adam, and Venom bans. You've got the Luna Protect because they don't have access to the Venom on the other side, as now be banned it out. And a Starlord Protect means that, yeah, Citadel can't quite copy that Domination draft that we saw earlier today.
What are we going to see for that final ban from Citadel? They can't ban that Starlord. Is it time to ban the Rocket to at least prevent that teleportation and the ability to harass so effectively? You could potentially ban out the Ultron yourself to prevent your opponents from going with an Ultron Starlord to allow duels, and that is the strategy they choose to take.
I guess it's quite interesting that you have the ban from Na'Vi, the one-sided Jeff, that's going to work out for them. And then they've also banned out the Venom, which I get, like Venom, just a ban in a vacuum is still pretty decent. Both teams taken out because the rollout certainly on that first point defense is so good. But one, Angela can also roll out fairly quickly. We saw a little bit of that from teams. But two, if it's just for more like the neutral fights around the payload once it starts moving, yeah, Captain America's still available and Polly's going to be just like, okay, yeah, I can move on to it. In fact, I think that's been the main win condition for Citadel so far, is just how quick they make those changes and how they don't seem to drop a beat. Like the whole thing of like moving over to the Portal 1 defense of Yggdrasil and then having Melio switch over from the Magneto to the Strange, and then Enzo picking, Polly picking up the Magneto, coming in and just having some clutch moments in seconds. Those smooth transitions, I think, have made a big difference. And it was, again, was something that Enzo was saying, like, we wanted to focus on this. If we need to make a change, we know how to make it, and we know how to make it cleanly.
Legitimately so. It is intelligence quickly and relentlessly. That is what we see from Citadel. The right call done faster than most people can react. You see a couple checks. Even Na'Vi are a little bit afraid of Citadel doing what Crook likes to, what Trust Me likes to do to some people. So everyone checks outside the door these days when we see Na'Vi in the game. Jerky on the Star-Lord. Crisis bringing out the Phoenix. Going to try and just keep it with the simple 2-2-2 and siege from range. Citadel, they are going for the 2-1-3. Tanuki going on main damage. Melio bringing us out that Ultron. And Ken will give us the Loki for defense.
So again, one of those instances that Na'Vi have the one-sided Jeff and not opting for it, at least for now. Maybe it's just because this first point is going to suit a lot more of this 2-2-2. So Citadel Gaming sitting back just a little bit more. It is going to be that one duelist of Tanuki that is just under halfway of having his ultimate. No closer than most people on either side. But Rajaro finding onto Melio means that there's going to be a lot more focus that goes in onto Ken and Alex to keep the rest of the team alive. But of course, Polly trades the elimination, so it feels that Na'Vi have to back off just a little bit more.
Polly's back to doing what they love to do, relentless harassment. And that, once again, like you say, is forcing Na'Vi to back away, regroup, before they can make their way onto the engagement once again. In the meantime, Tanuki is also just piling on damage output. They've got Ken, Alex, and Melio keeping them sustained here. And when anyone groups up, they're getting punished. Crook is taken down. Polly finding yet another pickup. Crisis goes down. Rajaro goes down. They burn the Psionic Seduction, but it's going to be essentially a team wipe.
And everybody else is about to have their ultimates or have them already. 5 looking and looming for Citadel Gaming. And now it's just over halftime left on the clock for Natus Vincere. Crisis has actually switched over pretty early on to the Winter Soldier. 50% ult charge on the Bucky means that he's not too far away from having that. And the knockdown of Melio, he's in a safe position and has the Idol Aura. It's a lot of these healing outputs that can be put on targets that aren't in line of sight.
The lacking range of Ultron takes a lot of damage immediately, forced to back away. They tried to go for a flanking engage. They almost do take out Jerky on the run back, but it was still completely preventing many from actually doing what they wanted and getting a massive unleashed AoE shot onto multiple targets. There's like Inferno comes out as well, finds nothing, which allowed Trust Me to look for a clean target. Gets caught on the door frame though, finds nothing. Alex is taken down, Ken is down. The backline of Citadel is melting. Freedom Charge to try and buy some extra time to the point allow Ken to portal back in as Rajaro is creating space for Na'Vi.
Ooh, are they going to have enough time? Yeah, Polly. every single time we sort of look like this looks done. There's just Polly and also the rest of the team now flooded in. This seems to be poetry in motion. Every single time that this objective needs stalling, he is there absolutely saving Citadel. Every single time.
Another double for Tanuki, once again set up by Polly. He can do this all day. We say it every time, and he keeps proving it. Na'Vi, with less than a minute to go, will have to make their way in for one more push. Potentially a portal play to try and reinforce, or some quick rollout characters could get them back onto the point, but they have no ultimates. Neither do Citadel. This is just going to be a straight-out brawl until Enzo can build that Psionic Seduction.
Yeah, because he used that ultimate first pretty much at the start of this map. It means that he's going to have it a little bit ahead of everybody else, and so this might be a good chance to pull it out. Losing Tanuki is not the best sign in the world, and it's not too great as well when you only have the 2 strategists left, as Ken moved over towards the Strange and has stayed on it. Rage of Ultron, you typically would see players like Melio throw this out pretty much instantly, and that's going to be the case here. 10 seconds left on the clock texture. Na'Vi are ready to sort of pounce onto the point, but they are being forced back, waiting for this ultimate to end.
The choke point with the Rage of Ultron was doing a lot of damage. Polly is dropped low, but is able to make their way back to their team so they can get sustained up. Ken is building towards an Eye of Agamotto, but needs to be kept up. Alex is going to be the one who's targeted. Needs to try and get some of that healing onto Ken so they can keep them sustained enough for another ultimate. But Alex falls. Enzo moves on to Wolverine to try and make it back in time because there's no Strange left. It's just Polly once again pushed off the point, giving everything they can for the last couple seconds of the hold, but they cannot do it alone. Melio cannot heal them through all of that. Melio will likely fall. They're just going to try not to get staggered. The Wolverine cannot delay, and Na'Vi, with just a couple seconds left, break the hold.
I think for Citadel Gaming, this is the area that makes me the little most nervous, I suppose, for them, because 2.5 minutes to try and stall on second is doable. But I don't think we've seen many instances where the payload has actually been stopped here. It tends to be the attackers making it through to third if they don't get stuck on that first point so far. But a timeout's going to come in, probably just a player that's crashed or high ping, packet loss, those kind of things. But man, Citadel, they held on right to the end.
They really did. They showed just how good this defense is, how much of a great delayer Captain America is. Before they became the backline menace that they are nowadays, the big reason you would see people play Cap is for stall, because they are fast, they are tanky, and they are hard to take down. The ability to just literally run in circles and jump over a point with mobility to make you harder to hit is actually quite valuable when it comes to burning through time. Add into that how people have started playing him with the auto attack cancels, allowing you to do insane damage onto backliners, setting up for duelists to get those finishing blows, and suddenly Captain America goes from a stall menace to an absolute menace.
Menace for sure. Again, looking sort of over the drafts, you've got the one-sided Jeff on the side of Na'Vi. Not seen it yet, I don't think. Crisis moved over onto a couple of stuff like the Winter Soldier and such. You've got a one-sided Venom, which we did see a little bit of. Oh, no, sorry, that was banned out from both sides. You've got a one-sided Invisible Woman, which was the case as well from the last map, even protected from Na'Vi as their first option when we saw them play it on Yggdrasil. And then Mantis was banned out from both sides too, so it's like Invisible Woman, I think, is in play and typically would be in these kind of instances. And you have got a one-sided Ultron on the side of Citadel, which they have been using, and a one-sided Adam too, which they don't really seem too keen to really use or rely on.
The Nimbus, of course, quite useful in certain situations, but on this first point especially, there's such a long walk between the spawn and the actual fights when you're this far away, this far into the actual point already. Crisis takes down Polly with the crowd control, making the most of this Winter Soldier that they did swap to a little bit earlier. Making their way up, and of course they have that vulnerability from the Terror Cape of Fate that is setting them up beautifully for these quick blow-ups. Lovely hit from Jerky there, finding Melio through the window as they continue to push up, taking out the Loki clones, making the most of that Cosmic Flame Sparks to get blow-ups in AoE onto Loki clones when they're grouped up.
This just seemed a little bit like Citadel lost a lot, and they lost these players with pretty big gaps of time in between them, which means that they're going to be staggered out. It means that now there's 90 seconds on the clock for Na'Vi on the second objective. The Rage of Ultron has to be the first thing that's used, but it also has to try and contest the point. Nobody else is really able to get there. The Ensong Inferno is going to be thrown right down onto the Loki, pretty much onto all of those regeneration domains, forcing him out early, and it's just waiting in the wings for Crisis. The super sub potentially finds that pick over onto Nuki onto the other side, and like I was worried about Tetcher, this second point hold for Citadel isn't good enough. It means that Na'Vi move on to third.
This is what we've been waiting for, Na'Vi. They make back a pretty solid amount of time here. They're still only on 2 minutes, but all of that is taken away from the first push. They are back in this, and they're looking for the momentum. Building up to ultimates, Tanuki has that Ensong Inferno, and they have Psionic Seduction. That could be enough for one-shots. Polly, though, once again gets caught. There's an Emma with crowd control with the Carbon Crush. There's Crisis with the Trooper's Fist. It's becoming harder and harder for Polly to make moves on this.
They lose Melio too, so this is kind of what happened last time. The Polly overextends, he gets taken out, and then everybody starts to drop on the side of Citadel Gaming because they're neither here nor there. There goes Polly. Crisis being a good counter to him, both as a player but also as a character, as the Bucky, like you mentioned. The freeze is at least good to force back Na'Vi, but they're still on the objective. It's still moving at full speed, and 90 seconds now to make sure that Na'Vi don't finish the end of this map for Citadel Gaming. You got a Fate of both worlds and a Freedom Charge, but nothing to win this fight. It's mostly to avoid losing it.
Citadel were mostly fighting far off the point there to make sure that they can keep Na'Vi in the spawn, while the cart moved forward with just a single person on the point. Freedom Charge for the bonus health, if they can hold on to that Rage of Ultron when they see someone is a little bit low. 2 members drops low, focus onto the Magneto. Crisis takes Enzo. Jerky gets Melio for the counter with level 1 Crook's Invisible Boundary, allowing them to sustain through that engage from Citadel. The perfect counter, and Na'Vi, they're starting to get the numbers advantage, but this last point is so hard to take down, but it will work if you get resets. Kraken Impact again. They push on through to break the hold again. They try to hold this on the spawn point again. Gets the double and the triple cap. Na'Vi are starting to look like they want to get on the board.
Yeah, it's an inspirational change for Na'Vi to bring in Crisis, and then the Bucky, ever since it's looked a lot closer. But Citadel Gaming losing the point with time on the clock when you almost full held first. It seems to be the common problem for them on Jalia. It's not as if it's a terrible map for them win rate wise, but it just seems to keep going this direction. Now they're on the attacking side, and Na'Vi going to sort of dig their heels in a little bit more and try to give us a bit more of a series as they're 2-0 down in this best of 5.
Can Na'Vi bring it back? They've given themselves the best chance. There's still time on the board. They didn't even get to all the way through overtime here. But Citadel on the aggressive setup is where we start to see them doing crazy stuff. Trust me, they're so locked in, especially as you can see, Venom was taken out on both sides. So they're actually going to be starting on the Magneto, not going for any Spider-Man tech, because if they wanted to get back, they'd have to either play something like an Angela who can rotate quite quickly. Captain America might be a bit too late, so we will not see any rollout strategies here.
I think it's worth adding that with Crisis coming in for Na'Vi, he did come in for the convergence map of Central Park as well yesterday. So I don't think it's a case of like, for Naga, you're out, you're done, you're benched. It seems to be a very like thought out plan for Na'Vi to include the players in these kind of game modes. Certainly to have a sort of hit scanny player like Crisis playing on the Winter Soldier means it's going to be a bit more scary for Tanuki on the Star-Lord to find some impact. He's going to try and float in, and Melio's taking a good bunch of damage. The duelist's actually on duelist characters for the most part instead of the strategists this time. But it's more just poking damage, forcing people out. Up until Polly just jumps onto Jerky, takes him out, and gets a full up onto Crisis. Hello?
Crisis does go down. To emphasize what you say, both of these teams do seem to just be running a new triple duelist setup where they just rotate through who is playing in which game depending on the needs of the actual matchup themselves. With Crisis going down quite early, they're being forced to portal back in to reinforce so they can try and contest it. Jerky trying to set up, trying to create at least a little bit of trouble on this actual point as Na'Vi are setting themselves up for a lovely hold here, but with Rajamon down, they're losing a lot of their sustain as Citadel. They have the high ground now and are beginning to create a lot of trouble. They're attacking from behind, they're attacking from above, and Na'Vi are just getting pincered in here.
And Ken's got the copy of the Fate of Both Worlds, which means that this brawl can happen just a little bit longer. The invisible boundary off of the point for Na'Vi. It's pretty much on a step, so you can contest this, but they're forced all the way back. Even through this ultimate, the Silent Seduction is just going to bully them away. You've got pretty much a brawl as Galactic Legend is forced through from Tanuki. The point is going to be taken. But I thought Crisis might be able to pull something back off that Kraken's impact, but he was just deleted, and Tanuki's hungry for more.
Send themselves up quite nicely. Lots of damage onto Jerky. Enzo rushing deep here, making space, letting that cart move up. And this is what Citadel do so well. They fight far forward. They are not a team that triples on the cart to make it move faster. They only do that when it's time to go and strike for the actual finishing blow. They just like to fight far forward, find the choke points, and create openings that way.
Na'Vi, it's just winning a fight, trying to get onto the high ground and set themselves up for a bit more poke damage. It's just going to delay Citadel. Seems to be an inevitability, I think, to sort of lose the second point at the rate things are going, but the Freedom Charge means that the Citadel Gaming can keep this momentum very much in their favor. It's brutal, it's damning as Paulie has smashed his way through two players of Na'Vi. It's going to force some space, but you can see that Na'Vi are very uncomfortable. A reset's required yet again. And it's a mad scramble to get another defensive fight on this second checkpoint.
Citadel relentless. They just keep pushing through. This is what Na'Vi were doing on the other side as well. Here comes Trust Move, a Freedom Charge of their own, where they are using it to get back to the point here. Immediately Carbon Crush locked down, and with the ultimate expiring, they're barely staying upright. Enzo Inferno for the turnaround to create some space, but Trust Me is barely hanging on. Melio's taken down by Crisis, though, who is finding these wraparounds. Jerky with their Enzo Inferno taking a lot of damage here. Ken has that God of Mischief, which they will be utilizing for the Fate of Both Worlds here for the extra push to try and break this second point, as they have a lot of time to spare.
Jerky wins that duel. It's a big one. Ken was up on the high ground, just pot-shotting people from distance with the clones, but has to jump in if he wants to get the copy on the Fate of Both Worlds. As it ends, a lot of damage comes through, and that's where Alex brings out the mainstay, Silent Seduction, alongside. It's Citadel Gaming trying to go for this fight, and Crisis again. He found the pick right at the start of this engagement, comes in with the Kraken's impact, and he's just taken out so quickly. He was down to 10% HP. It was more just a mad dash to try to get something on the board, but the more that Na'Vi seem to force it, the further away this map seems to be getting. 4 minutes on the clock for Citadel.
And they're rushing forward once again, creating space. Let the cart move. It has also moved by itself if needed, and they can put a body on it if they want to in the form of Loki. Everyone else, it's about staggering. Make sure that Na'Vi can't get set up. Looking for the lockdown, trying to pick off Trust Me, using the mist to try and maneuver on this high ground to look for those early pickups. Tanuki also trying to create a little bit of pressure, pushing all the way from behind here, creating a lot of damage onto Na'Vi. But Invisible Boundary will get forced out.
It's going to create chaotic comms as well. Na'Vi are going to be very much floundered right now. Trust me, does find a nice pick, but that's where the Galactic Legend's going to come in. There was a focus to look in behind, and the CC and damage that's been thrown Tanuki's way is good. He's not actually getting any healing up until now. It was just him trying to dash in the air, make himself a hard target. But that just opens the door for the rest of the dive for Citadel Gaming to come in. Just over 3 minutes, and look how far Polly's pushed it right to the end. Everybody else is still on the payload. He's ready to 1 versus 6.
They're once again going for a bit of a stagger. Like we said, they only group up when it's time to go for the finishing blow. And at this point, they're going to be fighting no matter what on the cart. So they might as well move it as far forward as possible. Jerky up to the high ground. Look for the stun onto Polly. Polly able to deflect it back. Will back away to their teams. They can heal up. Trust me with the freedom charge for the opening. Melio finding inside the regeneration domains, and they're not going to be too threatened by Trust Me. Alex, Fate of Both Worlds, also going to be forced out. They are committing to this to try and get onto the backline, but it's Ken that will fall first. Enzo Inferno finds very little, which means Melio will be forced to back up a little bit here if they get harassed by Trust Me, as Polly will fall. Na'Vi are starting to find the angles, starting to group up, and that was a 6 versus 1 on Enzo.
He just wanted to reset as quick as he could and just farm up that ultimate right until the end. So he does have it available. That Sound of Seduction is good. Crisis, seeing if he can just get a little bit lucky, go for a bit of a gamble to try to see what kind of prize he can pull out, but the hooks are not quite connecting. Citadel Gaming, 2 minutes now. It was down from 4. The Sound of Seduction is going to allow Na'Vi a chance to really force Citadel even further back and maybe force out an ultimate in response. And there it is, Enzo's Sound of Seduction, trying to catch on to Trust Me, that's doing his best to try to match the impact that the Captain America is having on Citadel's side. And he is really being annoyed. It's actually going to require Polly to go take him out.
Cap duel going to be happening in that low ground, but that main gateway is being attacked from multiple angles. Jerky does get caught while trying to flank, though. This is something that Na'Vi love to do. They love to flank, the Citadel are so used to it because they do the exact same thing. Invisible Boundary, Jerky will be respawning and will be close as they are, of course, in this final point. Fate of Both Worlds has to be forced out due to the aggression of Polly. Ken mirroring on the same side. Alex, 72% of the way built up. No more defenses for Na'Vi. Freedom charge is 83% of the way there, meaning that this Galactic Legend is going to be uncontested. Melting through, has to force out the Phoenix to try and sustain to buy time, but the car moves forward. Jerky's the only body on the point. Trust Me's coming back in for a last second dive, but he's taken down so quickly. No one can reach. It's a 3-3, Ryan.
Oh, and it's like, what, 10 seconds difference between them now?
Different.
Oh, man. So a little bit more time is going to be added on for Na'Vi to make it a solid minute. They're going to be attacking first, I think, to really be like, okay, you have less time to work with. You set the bar. Citadel's going to try and cross it. But I don't think that 10 seconds is going to make a difference. I don't think that it's an innate advantage for Citadel Gaming because we know that these overtime fights can keep happening. And I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but like Polly's Captain America, it's the fact that he's taken the most like bland, boring agent and just making it look so flashy. It's like Margarita Pizza winning the best pizza topping award. It just doesn't make sense. Like, how does that, you can't fathom that. Why would it be that? But that's just Polly on this character. He's just wanting a scrap the entire time. He's putting himself on a sale of like a buy one get one free with these fists and hoping that it's going to be good enough to take him to Atlanta.
To be fair, how often do you have a pizza that does not have marinara or cheese on it? Therefore, those are the go-to toppings. Either way, Na'Vi now having...
Are you a margarita pizza like believer as well?
Oh no, I'm a meats guy, but the base has usually got cheese on it. I personally prefer barbecue, but I understand that tomato base is the peak, but I just prefer differently.
The battle starts in 5.
Thank you for joining us for our podcast.
Yeah. At the most opportune time as Na'Vi not really fighting for elimination. It's a big game because it's a qualifier for the main international event of Marvel Rivals if you've just tuned in. But also the Citadel Gaming 2-0 up. A good defense here could pretty much write them a trip over the Atlantic at the end of this month.
Navi making their way forward. They've gone for that Emma Magneto setup, just extra sustain. Try and make it a front-to-back setup. They also have a lot of protection for the backline this way to try and deal with Polly, who right now just moving forward, trying to just stay mobile, stay inside. Faye just taken down in the backline. Incredible moves by Tanuki on the flank. Ken takes out Crook with the Loki siege, putting so much pressure on. And Navi, their push is already scuppered. Faye's forced to portal. They're out of time. They have to hyper commit immediately.
And they're going to have to do it without Jericho for 10 seconds as well. Oh, look at the ball. This is going to look really close for time. Maybe a boop is going to stop him, and it does. The body block. Navi, at the very least on this map, playing for a draw. 0 capture progression made. And 1 minute and 10 for Citadel Gaming to get, what, a third? That's the difference. That's what's going to change it here. So Citadel Gaming set themselves up marvelously, and Navi just didn't have enough time to make a good, clean fight of it.
It comes down to this. Citadel are a simple push, a couple seconds uncontested on the point between going into a map 4 and going to Atlanta. That's what it comes down to. Na'Vi, if they have any tricks left, it is time to pull them out. Jeff, Rocket being hovered. We're seeing the Star-Lord also being hovered. Not going for any kind of hyper Vanguard defense. They still want to duel, but if they can stay mobile, keep that Star-Lord on the move. And we're seeing very similar from Citadel.
Look at the stats, though. So, yeah, like, Tanuki's been great. Him and Melio being able to switch which one's playing, like, the triple strategist, which one's on the Phoenix and stuff, because both of them have such good moments. But 14 final hits for Tanuki, 15 for Polly. It's only really Crisis that's able to sort of keep up with them trying to go for this place. So, Jerky is going to be over on the Star-Lord to begin with. Just try to sort of hide himself. And if there's any stress, any worry, if your hands are shaking, you got to take a deep breath and hold on, because Navi, they're playing for pretty much that point. They're playing for a draw and hoping that we go to a different map. Citadel Gaming, it's completely in their hands.
It is down to this. Citadel Gaming, if they get one good fight, it's over. Na'Vi on the defense. Fate's back on the Jeff. Level 1 Crooks brought them out the rocket, so they have the BRB. They have at least some extra sustain that way. And Revive, in case anyone makes a mistake. And already, Crisis is being flanked, as is Crook. Already, we're seeing Polly making an impact as Enzo has stepped up onto the point, forcing the reaction out of Na'Vi.
He's just taking these fights on his own. He gets Crisis. He's managed to peel him away so much, and now Navi's panicking a little bit. They have to contest the point as there's a couple of bodies from Citadel here. The Rocket Raccoon is sent fleeing, and at least a trade goes in the favor of Crisis, but there's too many numbers, and there's too much for Navi to do. Citadel Gaming, they're going to Atlanta 2 for 2 for international events.
What a performance, Citadel. You cannot argue with that. They will be going to the global finals as the first representative for EMEA. Not first seed, they still have to fight for that. But once again, 2-time EMEA land representatives in convincing fashion.
Pick'ems have been obliterated. Navi, world champions, really expected to qualify. They still have a chance. You don't need to worry about that. But you expect them to be almost the first name on that list of the 3 teams that were sending from EMEA. Citadel Gaming, there's a maybe. Them and Chopped, perhaps 50-50 between them, depends on the day. That day hasn't happened because Citadel have just come in and 3-0'd the world champions of Navi. And frankly, Tetchens, a lot of those moments, it wasn't even close.
Yeah, there was a bit. This was the closest map, quite frankly. Na'Vi were able to push all the way to 3rd point, but the defense, they just could not sustain. Crisis, when it came down to it, with those Kraken impacts, was the game changer. But that means you are limited to winning fights when you have Kraken impact, and that's just not enough. Citadel, on the other hand, they were winning with individual pickups from Polly. They were winning with team fights from Enzo. They were winning with Tanuki and Melio, finding those actual main team fights and getting incredibly well-timed ultimates to just wipe the floor with everyone on the side of Na'Vi. This is Citadel representing EMEA, and I could not be happier if that's the performance they're bringing to LAN.
Means that Navi down to the losers bracket to potentially play up against the 2 teams that we saw win earlier, that being Insomnia and then also FaZe. and then the loser of this next series that we're about to see. So there's still a bunch of, I'd still say out of those teams that are still potentially left, there's a chance to qualify. Navi's name is still at the top of the list for being favorites. But I think they're going to be a little bit flabbergasted with how that whole series went. Like, they're like, it's over? Because we saw from the graphic at the start of today, like, they're always trading maps. It doesn't ever seem to be a really one-sided affair, especially when we get into these best of fives. But Citadel Gaming, they were definitely sat on some ideas. They said that they were trolling some of the drafts last week with the seeding games. It seemed to be the same thing. It was just Polly on Captain America equals win.
I don't know if this is possible. I don't know if this is possible from production, if we can get that bracket, but that graphic back up to see how often, if ever, there has been a clean sweep between these two teams like this. But in the meantime, like you say, this is something that seems to have been figured out at the mid-season finals, and that is you can't let Polly on cap. And then with the cap nerfs, everyone just sort of said, okay, it's probably fine. It's not fine. It's definitely not fine. Stop giving Polly Captain America.
It's just giving LeBron the ball over and over again, and it's just not really a case. So yeah, like, it only has been like MRC season 1 when these teams were OG and LG. So this was before, well, it might have been slightly after the Invitational, actually, with how the timings worked out. And then Fight Night, as much as I loved like the Night Shift guys as well, like, that's a third-party event. Like, in Ignite, in these like bigger events, it has been close with total map scores equaling 13 each. Now it's 16 for Citadel.
16 and 13 in terms of total map score between these two teams. And Citadel, thank you very much for that, by the way, production. Citadel continue their dominant run here. We have the interview with former Na'Vi player, Citadel duelist in Ismelio. And we got to start with the obvious question here. Is there some catharsis here, taking out your old team?
I mean, it feels really, really good. It feels great playing with this new team, and I really love them. To be honest, my old team hadn't been super nice ever since I left, some of them at least. But it was really nice shoving it a little in their face today and showing that we can just beat them now.
I mean, so we spoke a little bit to you, to Enzo, to Salah, basically being about like wait and see for playoffs. It really did seem that the main like strategy difference was just put Polly on Captain America more and he will just dominate, right? Like, what were those like subtle changes that people might miss? Because for drafts and stuff, it looked pretty much the same as you guys were doing for the most part. Compositionally, it's not like you had a super secret strategy character that you were relying on or going triple strategies for somebody else. It was just more of the same. It was just Polly was on Captain America more.
I mean, the major thing we changed for this game was just that we did some different last bans, because the last bans are like way more team specific, right? You want to last ban something that hurts them the most, and we knew all of the hero pools of Naga, Crisis, and Jerky, so we just punished the last bans for them mainly. And yeah, when we have a player like Polly, that's just absolutely the goal. Like, whatever Polly puts his hands on, he can make the best character in the game. Then we have to utilize that, of course.
So you have now officially qualified for Atlanta. The lowest place you can come now is 3rd, which is a qualifying spot. How excited are you? This is your second LAN. This is your team's second LAN. All of you are now once again representing EMEA. So it's time to look ahead to the international teams. Who are you looking at as potential competition?
I mean, I'm looking for some newer teams in NA. I've seen that FlyQuest has been doing really well lately. I think that Envy is still a big threat. I always think 100 Thieves and Sentinels are also really good teams. And for the other regions, there's teams like OUG and Ground Zero, I think are all really, really good. And I want to see what they can offer. And I want to play against them. I want to scrim. I want to learn from them. I want to teach them as well. But I want to play against them unofficial. The one thing I'm the happiest about is just seeing all of my team again in real life, since we're going to LAN now. It's going to be really exciting to meet them all.
Playing in front of an audience as well. Like, it's going to be a good showing for sure. I think the main question I had is because I remember speaking to Enzo right at the start of the stage, and he said one of the things that we worked on is being more versatile as players, being able to be more flexible, but also making sure that we get the right changes in at the right times. That seemed to be something that worked really well today. How quick that you were moving away from stuff like the Magneto, I think you got off of it to go Strange and stuff like that on Yggdrasil. It was very smooth. Like, for you, what was the difference here? What did you guys do better than Na'Vi to win this series so dominant?
I mean, to be honest, Navi and us have a history of playing each other, both when I was on the Navi side and when I'm on this side. I think today it's just a proof that our mental is a little bit slightly better. I think that's the major thing to take away, because they were extremely nervous, clearly. They didn't play up to their best level either, but we were nervous too. We were just a team that was less nervous, and we punished them their mistakes. We came into the game thinking, okay, we know they're going to be nervous, so we're going to just punish their mistakes, because they just lost the last game they played to VP. So we knew they were like the team that we could punish for the mental today. The other things I think are very important to notice is how much Citadel as a team has improved their payload maps, the push maps where you push the objective, right?
Yeah. 8-0 on them.
Yeah. You talk about the history between these two teams. Obviously, you were busy preparing for the match. You might have missed earlier. We did the research. And before this matchup, you guys were total map score against each other 13-13. After today, it is 16-13. So you mentioned history. There is a lot behind that. Do you think they're going to be coming with you to LAN?
I mean, in some way, I hope so, because there's, of course, some players on the team that I would love to meet again, and I'd love to see them again. But I don't know. Depends on if they fix their current issues that they clearly showed today and the last time they played VP. If they do that, I'm more than confident that they would be able to qualify. But it would be fun to see teams like Chopped and VP going to LAN, because they haven't been there before. So it would be very nice seeing some new faces around.
All right. Well, Melia, thank you very much for joining us. Do you have any words out to the audience, out to your fans, out to your old teammates, and obviously out to your potential opponents between VP and Chopped?
I mean, I don't really have anything to say for VP and Chopped other than I hope you prepare well enough. From the rest, I just want to say thank you to my team. I love my team very much, and I'm going to be excited to play on LAN with them.
Thank you very much for joining us, Melio. We'll let you go back and prepare for your matchups in the future to see if you can become the EMEA champion.
Thank you.
All right. Very solid, Melio. Convinced of their performance and a convincing win. They'll be heading in, of course, to those upper bracket finals. And, of course, they will be heading to Atlanta later this month.